How could a tragedy of such absolute cruelty occur in the heart of a nation renowned for its safety like Japan? The answer lies in the dark underbelly of the late 1980s, the peak of the bubble economy era. While the land of the rising sun was intoxicated by prosperity and the never-ending neon lights of Shinjuku or Shibuya, a dangerous social consequence was quietly taking shape. The fierce economic engine created a generation of workaholic parents who were virtually absent from their children's formative years. The phenomenon of latchkey kids' children who commuted to school alone, returned to empty houses, and grew up in isolation became widespread. Lacking parental guidance and surrounded by the expansion of the Yakuza underworld, many teenagers slid into violence and delinquency. From this dark abyss, an earth-shattering crime sprouted, permanently altering Japanese society's perspective on juvenile delinquency: the high school girl in concrete murder case. The most bitter irony is that, while the victim was a young girl full of aspirations, her brutal killers wore the faces of children still of school age. Junko Furata was born on the 18th of January, 1971, in Misato City, Saitama Prefecture, a region in southeastern Japan bordering the vast Tokyo metropolis. Located about 20 kilometers from central Tokyo, Misato was a peaceful city, much quieter than the bustling capital. Junko grew up in an ordinary working-class family consisting of her parents, an older brother, and a younger brother. Her father was a sales manager at a local canning factory, struggling daily to shoulder the living expenses for a family of 5. Her mother was a traditional housewife who stayed behind the scenes to take care of the cooking and the household. Financial hardship was a clear reality in the Furata household, but it did not dull the bright personality of their only daughter. By 1988, 17-year-old Junko was a senior at Yashio Minami High School in Saitama Prefecture. In the memories of her teachers and friends, Junko was like a radiant flower. She had a sweet, gentle appearance, a cheerful, lively personality, and was always ready to help others. Not only was she a good student, but Junko also harbored a passion for music, dreaming that one day she might stand on stage as a singer. However, the young girl was highly practical and deeply devoted to her parents. Seeing the wrinkles of hardship on her father's forehead, Junko could not bear to rely solely on him. Outside of regular school hours, she worked tirelessly at various part-time jobs to support her family. In the afternoons, she worked as a sales clerk at a home appliance store. At other times, she took on a packing job at a plastics factory. 1988 was supposed to be a promising year for Junko. She had just applied for a job, attended an interview, and successfully secured a position at an electronics company. Her future path was set. Immediately after receiving her high school diploma the following spring, Junko would officially become an office worker, earning her own money to support her parents and pursue her personal interests. An ordinary, honest life full of hope awaited her. Tragically, monsters disguised as humans ruthlessly crushed all the dreams of that 17-year-old girl. On Friday evening, the 25th of November, 1988, at 8:20 p.m., Junko finished a grueling shift at the plastics factory and rode her bicycle home. The road she took was quite deserted, with dim streetlights casting long shadows on the quiet asphalt. Suddenly, the roar of a motorcycle engine approached from behind. A masked young man swung his leg and kicked her forcefully, sending Junko crashing to the ground, her body scraped and in severe pain. The motorcyclist quickly hit the gas and fled. While Junko was still in a state of panic, a young man appeared and kindly helped her up. Playing the role of a passing hero, he said in a serious tone, "Are you okay? That guy just now was a gangster. He's been following you. The situation is very dangerous. Let me escort you home safely." Believing the boy in front of her was a savior, Junko limped along with her broken bicycle, following him. But upon reaching an isolated area, the savior took off his mask. He claimed to be a member of the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and declared that the motorcyclist earlier was his underling. He threatened to kill Junko, forced her into a nearby hotel, and raped her, offering a deceitful promise that he would let her go home if she obeyed. Instead of keeping his word, in the early hours of November 26, he took her to a park where 3 accomplices were waiting. They rummaged through Junko's school bag and found a diary with her home address. They threatened, "We know where you live. If you dare to run away or call the police, we will go there and slaughter your parents and brothers." Preying on the 17-year-old girl's filial piety and terror, the four demons took Junko to a 2-story house in the ISA area, Adachi Ward, central Tokyo. 44 days of a life worse than death. From the moment she stepped foot into that house, Junko endured 44 days of ultimate torment. To cover up their crime, they forced her to call home, lying to her parents that she was traveling with friends and advising them not to contact the police. This call successfully deceived her family, severing any chance of an outside rescue. The small room on the 2nd floor turned into a slaughterhouse of human dignity. Not only did they gang rape her in turns, but they also invited dozens of other delinquents over for collective sexual assaults. Any resistance was met with a rain of retaliatory blows using sticks, iron pipes, and golf clubs. When the freezing cold of December arrived, they stripped her naked and forced her to sing and dance on the balcony in the middle of the biting winter night until she passed out from hypothermia. When she fainted, they splashed cold water on her or beat her to wake her up to serve their animalistic desires. On the night of the 7th of December, 1988, her 13th day in captivity, taking advantage of the sleeping gang, Junko crawled down to the 1st floor to call the police, but the ringleader caught her. He slammed the phone down and dragged her back to the 2nd floor. In a fit of rage, he poured gasoline on her legs and set them on fire. The flames scorched the young girl's flesh. Left untreated, Junko's severely burned legs gradually festered, became necrotic, infected, and emitted a foul odor, permanently stripping her of the ability to walk. When she lost control of her bodily functions, the devils forced her to eat her own feces and drink her urine. They starved her constantly, only throwing her moldy pieces of bread or forcing her to chew live cockroaches. A series of disgusting foreign objects like burning matches, glass bottles, and iron bars were shoved into her genitals. They used lighters to burn her eyelashes, dripped hot wax onto her face, used pliers to rip out her fingernails, and smashed her fingers. Her once delicate face was completely disfigured, her internal organs ruptured. Despite being in unimaginable agony and clasping her hands, begging them for a mercy killing, she was kept alive like a broken toy for their amusement. The final mahjong game and the concrete drum at the bottom of the bay. In the early hours of the 4th of January 1989, the 41st day, the ringleader returned home in a furious mood after losing over 100,000 yen playing mahjong. Seeing Junko barely breathing on the floor, he decided to use her as a punching bag to vent his anger. He grabbed a 1.7 kilograms iron dumbbell and frantically rained sledgehammer-like blows onto Junko's chest and abdomen for 2 solid hours. Following the fatal beating, Junko fell into a deep coma. On the morning of the 5th of January, 1989, the 17-year-old girl took her last breath, finally freed from the clutches of the monsters. Panicking over the victim's death, the gang planned to dispose of the body. They stole an iron drum from a construction site and bought cement and yellow sand. They folded Junko's stiffened body, stuffed it into a suitcase, and placed it in the drum. Being superstitious, the ringleader tossed a VHS tape of the TV drama Tonbo, Dragonfly, Junko's favorite show, into the barrel to appease her vengeful ghost. They then filled it with wet cement, sealed the drum tightly, and used a truck to transport it to a vacant coastal lot in the Wakasu area of Koto Ward, Tokyo Bay. They shoved the barrel onto the grass, hastily camouflaged it, and fled, convinced their crime was buried forever. After witnessing this entire barbaric crime, the biggest question remains: who were these demons? What turned 16 and 18-year-old teenagers into such cold-blooded killing machines? They were not total anomalies, but rather the products of a modern society with many hidden dark corners. 1. Hiroshi Miyano, 18, the ringleader. Hiroshi was the mastermind who plotted the hero saving the Beauty Act, forced Junko into slavery, set her legs on fire, and battered her to death with a dumbbell. Contrary to popular belief, Hiroshi came from an affluent middle-class family. His father was a securities company director, and his mother was a piano teacher. However, because his parents were too busy making money, he was dumped on his grandmother to be raised from a young age. When he was brought back, the irreparable emotional disconnect turned him into a violent, defiant individual. His parents used money to cover up his mistakes. He used judo to bully his peers, dropped out of school, joined the underworld, and paraded himself as a yakuza for intimidation. Notably, Hiroshi had previously pursued Junko, but was rejected by the well-behaved girl. The petty resentment from that rejection was the spark for the entire tragedy. 2. Joe Ogura, 17. The emotionless henchman. He was Hiroshi's trusted subordinate. His parents divorced when he was in the 3rd grade, and Joe lived with his mother, a hotel cleaner who was constantly moving around. Lacking in education, Joe quickly dropped out of school and became Hiroshi's shadow. He actively participated in the most barbaric torture sessions just to prove his loyalty to his boss. Yasushi Watanabe, 17. The instigator. Also a victim of a divorced family, he lived with his mother and older sister. Yasushi got to know the gang when Hiroshi flirted with his sister. He was the masked individual who rode the motorcycle and kicked Junko down on the night of November 25, setting the stage for the entire tragedy before actively participating in her torture. Shinji Minato, 16. The slaughterhouse provider and the despicable truth about the complicit family. The 2-story house in Ayase, where Junko was imprisoned and tortured for 44 days, belonged to Shinji Minato's family. Shinji's father was a hospital administrative director, but he was a domestic abuser who frequently took his anger out on his wife and children with physical violence. Growing up in fear, Shinji developed a twisted psyche, using violence as an outlet. He brought Hiroshi's gang home to show off. 8. The most disgusting aspect, which sparked absolute outrage among the Japanese public, was not just Shinji's actions, but the silence of his entire family. Shinji's parents and older brother were fully aware of Junko's presence. Initially, Shinji lied that she was his girlfriend. But with the screams, the smell of burning flesh, and Junko's emaciated appearance, they absolutely knew the truth. Shinji's mother once went up to the 2nd floor to clean the room, saw Junko in a miserable state, but merely said, "You should go home quickly," and then clicked her tongue and ignored it. This family was deeply terrified of the thugs bearing the Yakuza label, and simultaneously burdened by the mindset of protecting the family's honor, fearing that calling the police would ruin their reputation. The ultimate cowardice, apathy, and selfishness of the adults in the Minato family inadvertently turned them into accomplices, directly depriving Junko of her only chance of survival. Had just one of them dared to pick up the phone and call the police, the 17-year-old girl could have been saved. They might have fooled humanity, but they could not escape the punishment of karma. On the 23rd of January, 1989, just 18 days after Junko passed away, Hiroshi and Joe were arrested by the police for kidnapping and raping another 19-year-old girl. At the police station, during separate interrogations, Hiroshi's immature criminal mindset and paranoid nature backfired on him. When police used professional tactics to question him about a female victim referring to the 19-year-old, Hiroshi delusionally assumed that a terrified Joe had confessed to the Junko case. Breaking down psychologically, Hiroshi voluntarily confessed to the entire process of kidnapping, the 44-day torture, the murder, and the disposal of the girl in the concrete drum. This unexpected confession left the investigators utterly astounded. Following the devil's instructions, on the 29th of March 1989, the police recovered the iron drum from the reclaimed land in Wakasu. The solidified concrete forced the forensics team to use metal cutters and specialized concrete breakers for hours just to extract the body. Junko's corpse was severely decomposed, requiring fingerprint matching for identification. The subsequent autopsy report became a bombshell that exploded within society. The injuries on the body were a testament to boundless brutality. Her face was disfigured, her teeth were almost entirely broken, her skull was fractured, and her brain had shrunk due to the beatings and starvation. Her ribs, pleura, and stomach were pulverized by blunt force from the dumbbell. Her legs suffered from necrotic burns down to the bone, and the most ruthless, agonizing detail that brought all of Japan to tears. The forensic doctor discovered her uterus was heavily damaged, and inside was a developing fetus. The devoted 17-year-old girl was pregnant before she was murdered. Based on this evidence, the police immediately raided the house in Ayase, apprehending the accomplices and Shinji's entire family for failing to report a crime. The legal battle, media outrage, and ludicrous sentences. The horrific truth about the case swept across Japan in a tidal wave of absolute outrage. However, that anger immediately slammed into a devastating legal wall. The juvenile law, Shonen-ho. At the time of the crime, all 4 masterminds were under 20 years old, the age of majority in Japan at that time. Under the protection of this law, legal proceedings had to be kept confidential, and publishing their identities and photos in the press was strictly prohibited. They were only referred to as Boy A, B, C, and D. The law operated on the firm belief that juveniles were blank slates who needed to be given a second chance at life. Unwilling to let demons hide in the shadows, the renowned investigative magazine Shukan Bunshun made a historic decision. They broke the gag order. They published the full real names, photos, and family backgrounds of the 4 killers on their front cover with an ironclad declaration. With a crime so devoid of humanity and so incredibly cruel, the perpetrators forfeit the right to enjoy the privileges of anonymity. The public has a right to see the faces of these monsters. This courageous decision ignited massive protests on the streets of Tokyo, demanding the death penalty for the murderers. At the trial, the defense lawyers launched the most shameless arguments. Clinging to the defendants' juvenile status, they claimed the 4 boys only intended to assault and sexually abuse and had absolutely no intention of killing the victim, stating her death was merely an unintended accident. After several intense rounds of appeals, in 1991, the Tokyo High Court handed down sentences that sowed sheer despair for the victim's family. Hiroshi Miyano, mastermind, 20 years in prison, the maximum sentence for a juvenile, instead of life imprisonment or the death penalty. Joe Ogura, 5 to 10 years in prison. Shinji Minato, 5 to 9 years in prison. Yasushi Watanabe, 5 to 7 years in prison. Civilly, Hiroshi's family had to sell their house to pay 50 million yen in compensation. While Joe Ogura's ashamed father sent compensation money, his mother continuously blamed Junko for ruining her son's life, and was even accused of vandalizing the victim's gravestone. As for the compensation money, as soon as Joe Ogura was released from prison, he embezzled it for personal spending, blatant recidivism, and a society's awakening. The law believed in rehabilitation, but the 4 perpetrators proved otherwise. For them, prison was merely a pit stop. In 1999, Joe Ogura was released and changed his name to Joe Kamisaku. In 2003, just 4 years later, his thuggish nature resurfaced, and he was arrested and sentenced to an additional 4 years in prison for kidnapping and brutally beating a man. Shinji Minato was released in 1997, moved away, and lived in seclusion. However, in August 2018, at the age of 46, he ran afoul of the law again, serving 18 months in prison for ruthlessly beating a company employee with an iron baton, causing severe injuries. The ringleader, Hiroshi Miyano, was released in 2009, changing his name to Hiroshi Yokoyama. In 2013, he found his hands in cuffs once again for involvement in a high-tech crime syndicate, scamming to misappropriate assets. This blatant recidivism was a slap in the face to the justice system, sparking a new wave of outrage. Junko's blood and tears were not shed in vain. They became the spark that ignited historic reforms. In 2000, under persistent societal pressure stemming from this case and other juvenile crimes, the Japanese Diet was forced to amend the juvenile law. The age of criminal responsibility was lowered from 16 to 14. Penalties for teenagers committing serious crimes were strengthened, allowing them to be tried as adults, and the anonymity protection laws were loosened to increase deterrence. Over 3 decades have passed, and Junko Furuta's smile remains forever frozen at the age of 17, taking her brilliant dreams deep beneath the cold concrete. The case is not simply a legal verdict, but a blood-soaked lesson on how evil breeds from family negligence, societal apathy, and misplaced legal leniency. It reminds humanity of a grim truth. Sometimes, tolerance toward demons is the ultimate cruelty toward the innocent.